So this is fake news, fresh off of competing at Norwalk's event, and so going to go through some of what went right, some of what went wrong, and tear it down and see exactly how bad everything looks inside. So first up front, the titanium cutters worked really well. However, titanium is kind of softer than steel, and so we do have quite a bit of chewing on these. I probably will never be able to use these again. So if I ever decide to rebuild this, I'm going to have to come up with something different. That's a pretty good piece of material missing right there. So it worked great, and I was happy with it. But there's things there that I would have to do different down the road. One of the biggest problems I had was where the shaft interfaced with the bushings. I wasn't taking into account how hot some of that was going to get, and it actually melted the plastic and just started melting away the frame there. And so, believe it or not, even with all that slop, this still spun all the way through the rest of the event. But clearly, this is something that wouldn't work for down the road. So what exactly is happening is the shaft that goes through is a piece of keyed shaft right here, just like this. And I mean, I ground off the sharp edges of that and whatnot, and you would think that wouldn't really cause any heat, but it was enough that it caused some issues in those bushings. They just got hot, and it just melted into the chassis. So instead of bushings, I'm going to have some sort of actual real bearings in that down the road. So that's going to have to take a little engineering on my part to redesign it. So let's pull the nose apart and just see how bad all of this looks when those parts are out. Those aren't supposed to look like that. Alright, so we had to fight to get this all apart. Yay, lots of fun. One of the reasons that I like using these bronze bushings is because of how just incredibly tough they are. They can take a really good hit. I use them in virtually all of my robots. The problem is they need to be supported really well on the outside in order to be tough for those hits on the inside. And the plastic, which has a lot of give to it, just didn't give those the right amount of support. So under the big hits, they shattered. And then they got hot and just melted and chewed up all of the frame. And so for the last 2 matches that this robot had, the shaft wasn't spinning on the bushings. The bushings were just spinning inside the plastic. And that's how we were able to keep spinning through all of this. Because it moved around in there and it wasn't tight anymore, the weapon could actually come back in and start chewing into the body. So the weapon was machining away material out of the frame. So I like using the UHMW. This was a really good idea, but the bearing setup for this weapon was poorly thought out, and it came back to bite me. Let's see if we can figure out what else broke. on this poor little robot. All right. Now, most everything is. Yes, I can immediately see what our problem is. So, they didn't do a very good job here. These motors, the drive motors, should have been both supported by the gearbox and then somewhere in the back to hold them up. And you can see that both of these drive motors have popped away from their gearbox. They're no longer, like that one's not even attached at all. This one's loose, and that one's not even attached at all. So it's clear to see why it stopped driving at the end of the match. And this is fairly easy to fix. It just needed some sort of support in the back to correctly hold those motors in place. But the weapon motor still seems good. Everything's good there. And I think all the electronics survived. Okay, it's all kind of held in place with tape, but all said and done, all of this, all of the electronics held up just fine. So, believe it or not, even with all this damage, this would be relatively easy to fix, put back together. All right, let's pull the drive motors out. Let's see what they actually look like in there. Okay, so that's not supposed to look like that. Okay. The gear is still attached to the motor, so that's why the motor's not sliding all the way out, but the screws that hold the motor to the gearbox are all stripped. So it's dangling. Yeah. And I don't know if you can see it on film, but can you see how bent that shaft is? Maybe how much it's angling forward and how much it's angling.
Oh yeah, okay. So
it's bent pretty good. So there probably isn't anything there I can use. This one I can at least use that gearbox, or at least parts of it. This one had the exact same problem. The screws that hold the motor in place stripped, so it basically came loose. At least on this one here, most of the gearbox is usable, so probably stripped out that back set of gears. So I should be able to use some gears from that one to fix this one. So between the two of them, I probably have enough parts to make one usable gearbox. So all in all, the electronics of it are all complete. So the flexible chassis helps keep all of that stuff from getting damaged. And all of the components are actually held in this closed cell foam, which is a great cushion for all of that stuff. So 2 drive speed controllers. There's the weapon speed controller. That's the radio. All right, so what does all of this mean for my poor friend here, Fake News? At the Norwalk event, the robot's final match where it lost was in the round of 8. So it didn't make the top 4 where it would have been guaranteed to go into the champions at the end of the year. But that means it's tied for 5th with the other losers at that category, at that spot in the bracket. And so I don't know what that means then for the poor robot going forward. If it was qualified for the champion event at the end of the year, then I would definitely rebuild the stuff that's here and definitely would take it. If it's not qualified, then at this point I'm kind of wondering whether we'll see it again. There's a lot of stuff here that still works. I definitely could put it back together. But I kind of think I'd rather concentrate on the 30 rather than the 12. So if it qualified, I'll go ahead and make Fake News spread again, I guess. I don't know. But if it doesn't, this may be it for a while. It's it's a lot of work to take a couple of robots to an event. So I don't know that I'll take it back again. We'll just have to see what the future holds.